Good morning. Here is your global news report for April 8, 2026. The global landscape is dominated by escalating tensions surrounding the Strait of Hormuz, with NASA's Artemis II mission achieving a historic milestone in space exploration. President Trump's stern ultimatum to Iran has triggered fears of military action and a surge in global oil prices, while the Middle East grapples with a severe humanitarian crisis marked by Israeli airstrikes in Gaza, medical evacuations halting, and an acceleration of judicial executions in Iran. The Artemis II mission successfully completed its lunar orbit, setting a new record for the farthest flight from Earth at 252,756 miles. The crew captured images of an Earthrise from the far side of the Moon and is now en route back to Earth. President Trump issued a final warning to Iran, stating, "The entire civilization will perish tonight," demanding the opening of the Strait of Hormuz. This follows reports of a U.S. military strike on the military target of Karg Island, a key Iranian oil export hub, drawing criticism and impacting international cooperation. In Iran, the judiciary has been directed to expedite death sentences related to the war with the U.S. and Israel, raising concerns about an increase in political prisoner executions. Meanwhile, in Gaza, Israeli airstrikes near a school resulted in the deaths of 10 Palestinians, prompting the WHO to suspend medical evacuations. Attacks on infrastructure, including bridges and railways within Iran, have also been reported, contributing to regional instability. Next, here are the key stories from the U.S. NASA's Artemis II mission has set a new record for lunar orbit and is currently returning to Earth. Concurrently, President Trump's military actions against Iran and his stringent immigration policies are major focal points, alongside growing concerns about gambling addiction among young people domestically. The NASA Artemis II mission, with its 4 astronauts, successfully completed a record-breaking flight, orbiting the Moon and reaching a distance of approximately 252,756 miles from Earth, coming as close as 4,067 miles to the lunar surface, surpassing the Apollo 13 record. The crew is now on its return journey to Earth. The United States launched an attack targeting military installations on Karg Island, a critical oil export hub for Iran. President Trump set a deadline for Iran to open the Strait of Hormuz, threatening devastating attacks and the demise of civilization if compliance was not met. He also threatened to imprison journalists for leaking information related to Iran. Changes in the Trump administration's immigration policies have led to instability for foreign doctors' employment. A Honduran wife of a U.S. serviceman was detained on a military base in Louisiana for deportation. Both conservatives and liberals have expressed opposition to changes in the H-2A visa program, citing potential impacts on wages and employment for immigrant agricultural workers. Next, here are the key stories from Europe. Ukraine's proposal for a ceasefire with Russia was rejected, followed by an attack on Odessa. Meanwhile, the U.S. ultimatum to Iran has caused global oil price fluctuations, and the UK has announced a cap on student loan interest rates. Ukrainian President Zelensky reiterated a proposal for a mutual ceasefire with Russia, timed for the Orthodox Easter on April 13. However, following an attack on Odessa that resulted in 3 deaths and 16 injuries, Russia indicated no intention to comply. U.S. President Trump warned Iran of a devastating attack if no agreement on the free flow of oil through the Strait of Hormuz was reached by 8 p.m. Washington, D.C. time on Tuesday, midnight GMT/01:00 BST. This warning caused global crude oil prices to temporarily surge past $111 per barrel for Brent crude before falling below $108, and then rebounding to around $110. To protect graduates from inflationary risks stemming from the situation in Iran, the UK government announced that the interest rate for student loans in England, Plan 2 and postgraduate loans, will be capped at 6% for the 2026-27 academic year. Next, here are the key stories from the Middle East. The conflict between Iran and the U.S./Israel has intensified, heightening tensions over the Strait of Hormuz. Iran continues its attacks on the Gulf region, while domestically, executions are accelerating. In Gaza, Israeli airstrikes have caused numerous casualties, and medical evacuations have been suspended, worsening the humanitarian situation and leading to an extremely tense regional scenario. The conflict between Iran and the U.S./Israel has entered its 39th day, with Iran continuing to target critical infrastructure in neighboring Gulf countries using missiles and drones. US President Donald Trump demanded the opening of the Strait of Hormuz and warned of devastating attacks on Iran, though Iran's proposed 10-point peace plan was deemed insufficient. Iran's Chief Justice has urged courts to expedite death sentences related to the war with the US and Israel, with 7 executions already carried out in January linked to protests. The World Health Organization, WHO, has temporarily suspended medical evacuations from Gaza to Egypt after a contracted worker was killed by Israeli gunfire. At least 10 Palestinian refugees were killed near a school in central Gaza due to Israeli airstrikes. Attacks have also been reported on infrastructure within Iran, including bridges and railways, further destabilizing the region. Next, here are the key stories from Russia. A Ukrainian drone attack resulted in civilian casualties, while oil prices surged, offering a glimmer of economic optimism. Domestically, significant state control measures are evident, including financial system reforms, the arrest of high-ranking officials, and increased regulation of educational institutions. A Ukrainian drone attack in the Vladimir region killed 3 people, including a child and their parents. The Russian Ministry of Defense announced the interception of 45 drones, including 3 in that region. Russian Urals crude oil prices exceeded $116 per barrel, reaching their highest point since 2013, marking a substantial increase of approximately 230% from around $40 in December. The Russian government is considering a major restructuring of its financial system, which could potentially limit citizens' freedom to dispose of their own funds and increase state control over finance. Next, here are the key stories from China. China is engaging in diplomatic efforts regarding the situation in Iran while simultaneously promoting transformation in its hospitality industry and transitioning to green technologies. The nation is also expanding its influence as a key production hub within the ASEAN+3 region. China's Foreign Ministry spokesperson Mao Ning urged relevant parties to play a constructive role in de-escalating the situation in Iran and promoting peace negotiations, following the US setting a deadline for Iran. China's hospitality sector is undergoing upgrades, reflecting broader service industry transformations. In Tianjin University, Pakistani researchers are engaged in studies on new energy vehicles and clean energy technologies under China's green transition policies. The ASEAN+3 Macroeconomic Research Office (AMRO) reported that China has emerged as a primary hub in the ASEAN+3 production network over the past 2 decades. Furthermore, Chinese-made electric vehicles garnered significant attention at the Bangkok International Motor Show, underscoring their growing presence in the regional market. Next, here are the key stories from Japan. Amidst escalating international tensions impacting the domestic economy, the Japanese government is focusing on energy security and measures to combat price hikes. Domestically, advancements are being made in streamlining financial services, increasing revenue from tourist destinations, strengthening university hospital governance, and developing large-scale arena projects. President Trump expressed dissatisfaction with Japan's cooperation regarding Iran, while Prime Minister Takaichi indicated preparations for a summit with Iranian leaders. To counter rising oil prices due to the Middle East situation, gasoline prices were maintained at 170.2 yen as of March 30th, with plans for releasing oil reserves and securing alternative supplies. 7 major financial institutions, including banks and securities firms, will establish a new company this autumn to offer integrated inheritance and estate procedures for clients. In response to price increases, fuel subsidies will continue, but the prolonged Middle East crisis is fueling discussions about a supplementary budget. The Himeji Castle's introduction of a dual price system on March 1 led to a 17% decrease in visitors to approximately 140,000, but generated revenue of about 270 million yen, doubling the previous year's figure for the same month. Tokyo University plans to transition its affiliated hospital to direct management following a series of corruption scandals, aiming to enhance governance. Osaka Metro, in partnership with Mitsubishi Estate, is developing a new arena in the eastern part of Osaka Castle Park, with an estimated project cost of 100 billion yen, targeting an opening after fiscal year 2028. Next, here are the key stories from Asia-Oceania. The Middle East situation has become increasingly tense following the US president's ultimatum to Iran, exacerbating the energy crisis. Meanwhile, India's Supreme Court is deliberating on religious freedom, and Artemis 2 has released historic Earthsat photographs. US President Donald Trump issued a final ultimatum to Iran on April 7, demanding the reopening of the Strait of Hormuz and acceptance of US demands, warning that the entire civilization will perish. In relation to this, India's crude oil imports reached a record high of approximately 91% in February 2026, with over 54% sourced from West Asia, indicating that the energy crisis caused by the Middle East conflict is accelerating a global return to nuclear power. NASA released historic Earthsat photos taken by the Artemis 2 crew from beyond the Moon, an achievement not seen in over 57 years since the 1968 Earthrise photo, a feat celebrated by the US President. India's Supreme Court has commenced final hearings on issues of gender discrimination in religious sites, including the Sabarimala temple, and the scope of religious freedom for multiple faiths. Next, here are the key stories from South America. Venezuela is showing unusual cooperation between its government and opposition to protect assets, while in Argentina, dissatisfaction with President Milei is rising, and the Chilean president has supported Argentina's claim over the Falkland Islands. The Venezuelan government and opposition have jointly requested a 45-day suspension of proceedings in a New York court regarding claims totaling approximately $21.3 billion from about 20 creditors, aiming to prevent the seizure of PDVSA and Citgo assets in the United States. Support for Argentinian President Javier Milei has fallen below 60%, reaching its lowest point since taking office, with Atlas Intel reporting 62% holding a negative view, citing inflation, unemployment, and corruption scandals as primary factors. Chilean President José Antonio Cast, during his first visit to Argentina, met with President Javier Milei and issued a joint statement formally supporting Argentina's sovereignty claim over the Falkland Islands, Malvinas, South Georgia, and the South Sandwich Islands and surrounding waters. That concludes today's Global News Report. Have a great day. Thank you for watching.